You're watching The Tech. Seattle man's conviction in 1957 cold case comes undone due to old phone records. This is interesting. I mean, everyone's saying like, "Hey, it's really cool. Check it out. The guy, he's been exonerated. Everyone thought he did this. It's the oldest cold case, and now it's he's exonerated." But there's something deeper here we can look at, Wendell. Shall we dig a little deeper like we do?
So he was arrested in 2012. It's 2016. And he was sort of the favorite for the murder of this little girl in 1957, but he was exonerated once. They dropped him as a suspect after some investigation, but then he sort of came back around as a suspect in 2012. Now, what does this have to do with technology? Why do we mention this? Well, finally, they got phone records from 1957. He had made a collect call from a phone booth that was far enough away from wherever the abduction took place that there's no way that he could have made it there to abduct the little girl. But the important thing is that the phone records from 1957 were maintained this long. And so in our modern world, it's like, hey, how, this whole NSA information rabbit hole and all this, how long is this stuff maintained? Indefinitely, apparently.
Well, I mean, didn't a lot of the companies, they say, hey, we keep the records for 6 months. And I think that's kind of the rule is 6 months. But why not keep them forever? I mean, there could be some valuable data.
The other thing with evidence like this is that it could be just as damning as it is exonerating. I mean, circumstantial evidence is makes up a lot of court cases a lot of the time. And Netflix, some of the most top-rated shows on Netflix is about a guy that was arrested that may or may not have been innocent, that was arrested again that may or may not have been innocent.
What shows this? Sounds like every show out there.
He may or may not have been innocent the second time, but it looks the way that the thing, I mean, I don't actually know, but if you follow what the Netflix show is, the dude was totally innocent, just sort of a country
Is that the making of a murderer thing?
Yeah, making a murderer or whatever it was. It was really highly rated, and seems like the guy was innocent, but he didn't have any phone records from 1957 apparently, or GPS pings or something.
So while it's good this one guy got off, just let you.
It's just as likely to send you to jail as it is to set you free.
Speaking of setting you free, let's take a look at this virtual desktop thing that everyone's freaking out about. So VR headsets, they're hitting the market. The Vive is on its way out the door. The Oculus is on its way out the door. People are getting them. This is virtual desktop, VR desktop. I'm sorry, but virtual desktop, that's a very confusing name because we've had virtual desktops for a very long time, and this is something total. This is virtual reality desktop, in my opinion. It should have been called VR desktop or something, in my opinion. But it's a program that allows you to have a desktop environment inside, like a VR world. You can curve the screen to make it, I guess, easier or whatever. And you can even press a button to make your desktop background disappear so that, just your desktop applications blend into the grand scheme. There it is. Yeah, check that action out. So the other interesting thing about this is you'll be able to do some monitor sharing. You can integrate this with Steam. There is a very cool video player that's built in. I'll skip forward and see if I can show you guys that over here toward the end. You can watch your 3D movies and stuff like that. Very interesting. I'm probably more interested in just VR from, YouTube 3D movies, that sort of thing, where you can sit there in an environment and then go forward. There we go. Check that out and look around. Now this app will have programs for this. There'll be obviously programs that are outside of this app, but it's kind of an interesting implementation. What do you think, Wendell?
I like it. I like it a lot. The thing that's going to do it for me is the headgear resolution high enough that I don't see the pixels, or that the pixels are not as large as they are now? Because obviously the experience that you're going to have from having the headset on is going to be different than what you're experiencing with the video.
Yeah, that's going to make it or break it is resolution. That's the first thing that I thought is, as soon as I put this on, you're going to go from 4K 40-inch, which is the same pixel density as a 1440p 27-inch. And if you've used, a lot of our audience members use one of those type of monitors. If you're going from that, I don't think the density is going to be the same. So it's going to be like suddenly your desktop is going to be a downgrade as far as the pixel density goes. I don't know. I can't see it being cool initially until we get better quality hardware, but it's a sort of a look into the future of what we can expect in the VR world. I think also another thing that's pretty interesting about the VR world is I'm really looking forward to augmented reality, where let's say 20 years in the future, everyone has an AR room in their house, or maybe part of a wing of their house is the AR area, and when you go there, suddenly you're hanging out in a bar with all your friends, you know, and they're there too, and they're sitting beside you, and you see them there. You take your glasses off, they're not there anymore, but you know, you put them back on, you got your headphones, you're basically hanging out. I'm not sure if you could do something like that in full VR, possibly, with the Vive. I would think it'd be more plausible. You'd be able to move around a bit, but even with the Oculus Rift, if you could just put it on and have everyone sitting around a table, maybe like this program allows you to map your desktop area so that your friends can see your room and your desktop. Maybe they could join you. That would be kind of cool. A way to be social while not having to actually physically go anywhere. And then at the same time, one of the things about going out is you go out, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home, but you know, you get stuck and your ride's not there. This is like, all right, guys, see you later, and you click X and you're done. You just go to bed, do whatever, have a sandwich. Kind of an interesting thing. Is that antisocial if you're alone together?
Somebody ought to do this for William Shatner before he dies. There's a picture that's going around the internet that's like, you know, Scotty and Bones and Spock sitting around a table, and they're all laughing, and then in the next frame they're sitting at the exact same table, and it's just William Shatner by himself, and he looks kind of sad. And so somebody needs to do that in that room, make the model of that, the 3D model like we saw in the desktop video, and make the 3D model of that room so that Bill Shatner can, you know, say goodbye to the rest of the cast before he also dies.
So I Googled lonely Shatner, and all I got was this picture of Bill Shatner there wearing a purple bra.
I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat. It's kind of funny, but it's also really sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Poor Shatner. Anyway, back to the VR stuff. Microsoft's holoportation with HoloLens. Isn't that what I was just talking about? And then you throw this article at me. So this is interesting. Let me go ahead and play the video, and you can talk about it.
So with the holoportation thing, you're basically wearing Microsoft's HoloLens, and they've got rooms set up that have these 3D cameras, and so it's capturing in real time the people in the other room, and then it's extrapolating them and putting them in your room in 3D. And so the video, if the video is not faked, it looks very convincing. It looks very real. I mean, if HoloLens is this good, maybe it's worth the $5,000 price tag. Of course, you can't just do this with HoloLens by itself. You also need that fancy, elaborate setup, and it looks like you need those 4 camera columns and some other specialized equipment. And it looks like they've also sort of set up their room with the same chairs and the same elements in the room so that when somebody sits down, it looks like they're sitting on a chair that's physically in your room, and the chair is there, but the person is not. This will probably take over the Fortune 500 if it can be made into a push-button technology, but it has to basically be idiot-proof if those people are going to use it in business as well.
Yeah, I really do think that people are going to have a standardized holo room, and we're going to also imagine a mega bar that is a bar where you could go. This is somewhere you actually physically do go, but when you walk in the door, they hand you a VR headset or augmented reality headset, and then you are hanging out with people from, you know, someone in Beijing, you got somebody in San Francisco, you got somebody in London, and you're all sitting around a table at a bar together. That's probably the next best thing to teleportation, and I think that we'll see that at some specialty locations. You could probably do that at home too, but you know, people are still going to want to go out for the atmosphere and whatever else people go out for. I don't know. I like to
America's going to need less awful internet first, though.
Oh yeah, about that.
And nobody from Australia will ever be able to use this. Sorry.
I didn't want to talk to those Australians anyway. Oh no, you guys are awesome. I'll probably come hang out with some of you in Melbourne or Sydney.
If the people from Australia actually do get on this thing, they'll look like Tomb Raider from 1993.
They all have big triangular breasts. We know how you guys roll. That's to ward off all the things that will kill you. You just impale them on your triangular breasts. Oh, here comes another freaking laser sword wielding Gator Vader. That's what they have, right? I don't know. They've got everything.
Gators.
Darth Gators. That's how bad it's gotten in Australia. They now have what's known as a Darth Gator, and it will kill you, for sure. Oh,
Who knew when you combine carbon nanotubes with alligators, that's what happened. Only we could travel back in time and warn ourselves.
warn ourselves.
It's worse than cancer.
We need this to cull the weak of society. That's what they said in meetings.
The only antidote for the carbon nanotube infused gators would, of course, be the asbestos spiders, which are also available in Australia.
Oh, Jesus. It's the asbestos way to kill anyone. Moving right along, let's talk about this new bill that is on the table. And what they want to do is force you to give up all your information when buying a prepaid cell phone. Now, you know, the attacks happened in Belgium. All of our friends and people in Belgium. Hope you guys are okay. Belgium's beautiful. Brussels is beautiful. Beautiful. It kind of sucks that this nonsense keeps happening. As soon as it happened, immediately all the politicians are like, whoa, encryption. Hey, these guys are using encryption to destroy and kill everything. Well, more than likely what they used was a prepaid phone or something like this, and generally no encryption on this. The nice thing about this is you can go and you can buy them with cash, which is hard to track, and they don't require any personal information when you purchase them. So the bill on the table here would force people to essentially give as much personal information when buying a prepaid phone as they give when they're buying a standard contract phone. Now, here's what I think, Wendell, and I'll let you chime in. I think this is going to maybe not change much of anything. I think it'll force some of the criminal element more underground. They'll find different ways. They'll use false names, false IDs. I think that they'll usually find a way to get around this kind of stuff, but I do think that this is something that should be looked at with maybe a stronger glance than like encryption. I don't think encryption's the enemy. I don't think this is the enemy either, but you know, I think it might merit more of a it might merit some changes, but I'm not sure if this is the totally right way to do it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, when we went to Computex last year, I was kind of surprised because I wanted to get a prepaid data card, but in order to get the prepaid data card, I had to give up a lot of the same information. So I thought it was really interesting, and a really interesting contrast culturally because, you know, here it's like, oh, it's prepaid? Yeah, great. Cash? Yeah, cash is king. Sounds good. And there it was like, well, I just want prepaid data. You know, I'm not setting up a contract. I'm not, you know, doing anything. They're like, sign this thing. We need your ID. Got to take a picture of this. This is the other thing. And it's like, well, this is not a contract, right? I'm just, you know, getting a prepaid SIM. They're like, yeah,
right.
No, it's just prepaid. We just do this is just security precaution. It's like, oh, okay. Sounds good, thanks.
You're still getting billed by 7-Eleven, aren't you? By the way, if you guys ever go to Taiwan, 7-Eleven controls everything. It's basically like you want TV? Yeah, sure, call 7-Eleven. They'll hook you up. You want running water? Call 7-Eleven. They'll do it for you. You want a cell phone? Call 7-Eleven. That's
or very old eggs,
but
7-Eleven. They're right by the door.
Fermented eggs, man. Those are delicious. Stinky tofu? 7-Eleven. Anything you need. Even gaming mice. We saw some gaming mice with some decent. It was even a mouse for like, you know, about the same price as our mouse in a 7-Eleven, and it had the 3090 sensor, which some people prefer to the sensor we're using in our mouse. It's a slightly older, one of the first flawless sensors from Avago. I was like, holy crap, this thing's got a 3090 in it. Right here in the 7-Eleven. I'm like, what the hell? Yes, I'll have a cell phone and a gaming mouse and stinky tofu and hook up my water. Thanks.
To be fair, Taiwan is the only place I've ever seen advertisements for RAM on the side of a bus and a subway, you know, like, and in the subway. It's just like, oh yeah, here's an ad for an MMO. Okay, reasonable. Oh, and here's the RAM upgrade that you'll need to play the MMO. Only in Taiwan.
That's, man, makes me makes me want to live there a little bit if it wasn't so damn hot. Anyway, back to the prepaid cell phone. So you had to give them all your information. Do you feel like that's a good way to do it here? Or do you think that the criminal element will still find a way?
The criminal element will still find a way. This is not really anything. This is also not anything preventative. It's like we're already tracking everything with these cell phones. There's just so many prepaid cell phones, we don't really know what to search for. I guarantee you that for this prepaid cell phone that the terrorists in San Bernardino destroyed, I guarantee you that they have the location data and all of the other information, everything that was stored by the tower, just based on where those people went and you know, which burner phone it was and that kind of thing. This is all about trying to piece together things after the fact. This is not going to make it any more easy for people to tell that, you know, there's a terrorist cell or that people are using their phones for criminal activity or anything like that. Look at the bank job. There was a bank job out in the American Southwest, and they were able to figure out who the criminals were, even though they had burner phones, because they were using their burner phones and their real phones at the same time. And then when they did the bank robbery, they only took their burner phones. And so they were able to basically dump all of the cell phone records from tens of thousands of phones in a couple of towers to look at the string of bank robberies, find the phones in common, and then ferret that back into phones that were associated with those other phones. And so we already have that. We don't need this. We don't need more laws on the books. So I don't know what the end game here is. I don't know why they want this. It could be just politicians trying to say, yeah, terrorism, look, it's a win for terror. You know, I don't know. But I don't think we really need it.
Maybe they could do this to make people feel better, just kind of like taking your shoes off at the airport, that you don't really... I mean, it makes you feel more secure. And we've got some people in other parts of the world going, what? You guys take your shoes off at the airport? Yes. Some idiot, one idiot, tried to set his shoes on fire. So now millions of Americans and people traveling through America must take their shoes off and smell up the entire terminal. Okay, this is kind of wild. Construction company in Texas. They tore down the wrong house. They were supposed to go tear down one house. They used Google Maps to see where they're supposed to go to tear down the house. They look at the Google Maps. They're like, yeah, this is it. They show up and just tear it down. Owner comes back and was like, dude.
Where'd my house go?
And so anyway, what's funny is instead of taking the blame for it, they've told her, listen, this is going to be a major fight with insurance, and it's not our fault. It's Google's fault. So now there's a question here. Google legitimately had the wrong house. They were using Street View. They opened up Street View. They looked at the picture on Street View, and they were like, that's it, destroy. Should Google be responsible for having the wrong data, or should they be responsible for not doing their diligence, knocking on the door, asking the neighbors, hey, is this the right house? Is this actually 22 whatever 7, destroy my house lane? They don't want to take the blame. They're going to let insurance take care of it, but they're not saying sorry. They're not apologizing. They're just like, nope, Google's fault. All the way, Google's fault. I think that's kind of a cop-out.
It is totally a cop-out. The situation here, though, is that the construction company, so this area was hit by a tornado or something, and the house that they tore down also had structural damage and was really bad. But the owners had applied for a permit to fix it recently. And so the owners had intended to fix it, but the people that showed up were like, I don't know, it kind of looks like a war zone. Maybe we should tear it down. I don't know. I really think the company that is in the demolition business should have better protocols for determining which house to tear down, given the finality. But I don't think this is as if, this was a duplex.
No one
or
was
something.
living there.
Yeah, so, it's not like, I don't really see that as that big of a mistake overall, and I don't really see this as Google's problem, because you can't, most people should not assume to trust Google as far as that goes. I mean, there are some residential streets where just like really old residential neighborhoods where like the road snakes around and it's like there's an odd numbered house on the even side of the road because of the way that the road like snakes around, or it ends in like a sort of a fake cul-de-sac or whatever, and it's like, that's number 31 right next to number 30. Who knew? So I can't. It's like, well, it's on the wrong side of the road. I tore the one on the other side of the road down. It's just, no, you can't be absolutely sure. Take stuff in your protocol other than just the house number, other than just where it shows up on Google Maps. I mean, that's like in the Java license agreement. Don't use Java for life, for life-saving equipment or nuclear control equipment or anything like that. It's actually in the Java end-user license agreement. It's like that.
That was a depressing topic. Let's talk about depression now. That was my best segue of the day, I think. So there's a study come out from I believe it's University of Indiana. I think it was Indiana. Pittsburgh. What the hell? The Pittsburgh School of Medicine, they did a study, and they have said that depression and heavy social media use are linked together. And I think we need to sort of take a Freakonomics approach to this, because they've just looked at this and they're like, oh, people who use a lot of social media are depressed. but I don't think they went deep enough, in my opinion. So what if the people who are already depressed are using lots of social media because they're depressed, and then they sit there, and there's a couple things I want to pull out of this. One thing is when you're looking at Facebook and stuff like that, you're not actually seeing that person in the photo. You're seeing a highly idealized version of that person based upon their own, they're presenting their package of who they are to the world. It's sort of some people are narcissists. It's actually sort of raising a generation of narcissistic type people who are prone to that behavior. But we have to look at it from that sort of point of view. You're already depressed, and then you start using social media because you're bored and you're depressed, and then you see these highly idealized versions of your friends or people you know or people you've liked because of whatever, and then you feel worse about yourself, and it's a self-perpetuating, never-ending, vicious cycle. So that's, in my opinion, what's really going on here in this study. Social media use.
I would agree with that. I need to go be depressed now.
Don't go to Facebook. It will make you worse. That's the bottom line here, is if you're already depressed, don't go to Facebook. It will make you worse. And if you do go to Facebook, just remember that everything you're seeing on there is a load of BS. Pretty much. Unless someone's like doing a vlog about how they're trying to improve their life and like, oh, I'm sad and I'm trying to. They're being real. I don't know. Boogie does some stuff like that, and I feel like he's being real. And Barnacle did a few videos like that where he's being real and just saying, guys, I'm tired and sad, and let's get better, and that kind of. Maybe that's not an idealized version. You're being real, but still, it by and large, yeah. All right.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No, get outside. That'll be good for you guys. I'm telling you right now, you better do it. I should be doing it right now. So, in that same line here, we're talking about, young people getting depressed on the internet. Let's talk about Microsoft's really awesome teenage AI called Tay. Tay. What kind of name is that? Now, everyone's running around and screaming that, Microsoft is crazy, and Microsoft is apologizing profusely because what happened is they created a sort of a chatbot or an AI. And the whole idea was that the AI was supposed to go out there and be a teenager on the internet, on social media, on Twitter, whatever. And she was, I guess, can it be a she? Yeah, it's got a persona. It's a she. It was supposed to just, observe teenagers on the internet and then try to become that and then have discussions with people. The outcome is hilarious. Like, oh, God, I can't even read some of these. I guess people don't like feminists very much, and people don't seem to like Jews very much, or at least the young people. And then, saying things like Hitler was right. And this is all Microsoft's ad bot. Of course, they went back and deleted all these posts and they're still...
The PR machine is still running full tilt, like, oh, we're deeply sorry for how this happened. But I can't help but think that the way that they program the AI, it's not the AI's fault. It's not Microsoft's fault. This is a reflection of ourselves. I mean... when the AI is going to be trolled and it's going to make a lot of dumb mistakes because it is dumb. It's sort of a first-generation AI. But really, the people who are trolling it are just as guilty as whatever guilt you would want to project onto an AI, which I don't think is anything you should do anyway. But, so this is sort of a reflection of ourselves more than anything, I think.
That's kind of
sad.
Yeah, it's, in my opinion, the guys in Redmond, you guys should be praised for this. You guys did a great job of holding up a mirror for the younger generations on social media. You did a really good job of that. It was a success from that standpoint. Now, it was heinous, and we don't like to talk about things that are heinous, and we don't like to talk about things that cross certain boundaries because it's uncomfortable. I'm so uncomfortable. He talked about Hitler. I am uncomfortable. Well, that's what happens. So, sorry. I feel like I'm going very Freakonomics today. I love the Ricky Gervais quote because this is something that they wanted to make sure that it wasn't just copy and paste. Because you can trick the AI into saying things just by saying, hey, Tay, repeat after me, and she'll repeat after you, which is kind of a really stupid thing to do. Yeah, just turn on read write. Nothing could go wrong from that. But... they wanted to make sure that she was really, answering some real questions. So they asked her something about, is Ricky Gervais an atheist? And the response was, Ricky Gervais learned totalitarianism from Adolf Hitler, the inventor of atheism. That sounds God, that sounds like 4chan.
I said there was sort of a friend of a friend that worked on Watson, which was IBM's AI project. That's the one that won the Jeopardy championship among, they had the Jeopardy championship with all the past winners, people like Ken Jennings that had won a ton of money on Jeopardy, the trivia show, and they had Watson on it. But there was a story from a friend of a friend that knew somebody that worked on it, and he said that they had they'd accidentally, like when they were teaching Watson, they were tweaking it in some of the rounds of Jeopardy, and they accidentally or on purpose, not really sure what happened, fed it Urban Dictionary. And then it was starting to incorporate Urban Dictionary stuff into its responses in like the test Jeopardy rounds before the show. And it was so bad that they just were like, all right, we're just going to restore from backup. No Urban Dictionary. Let's blacklist Urban Dictionary. Watson does not need to know anything about Urban Dictionary. And I just thought that was a really funny story.
Watson. Oh, that's good. Shall we go to Angola? I think that's a good idea. I've been wanting to do this all day. Let's go to Angola and talk about the situation with the internet there. So many people in Angola, which is just south of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think that's a Donald Trump building somewhere. Anyway, in Angola, they don't really have much internet. And remember Facebook's whole, free, I forget what they call it, the free internet thing. You know what I'm talking about. The thing that India was like, not in our country. I almost said that with an Indian accent, but someone would call me racist because I'm only allowed to make fun of my own color, right? That's how it works, yes.
Angola has that for Wikipedia. Well, any Wikimedia site, so not just Wikipedia,
and
a few
Facebook.
others. And Facebook.
So that's free basics, that's what it is. So you have Facebook free basics there, and Wikipedia. And essentially, people have mobile phones more than they have computers, and the data is extremely expensive, so expensive that it's not even worth using. So the creative people in Angola have figured out some ways to share media amongst themselves. Because Wikimedia, you can upload large files, and then Facebook, you can share things. So they've created private groups on Facebook, and then they've gone over to Wikimedia or Wikipedia, both of which have a 0 rating on your phones. And they've uploaded these large files. Sometimes they've disguised them as PDFs or whatever. And then they go, and this is like some new movie or, some new album or whatever, some copyrighted piece of material that they normally don't have access to. And then they go over to the Facebook group that are closed and you have to be invited into, or they, just let their friends in. And then they share a link to it. So they are, culture finds a way. People love to share, they love media, and they're going to find a way. And over here, we're seeing a couple different things. We're seeing how, pirates, but just human beings. I mean, this is what it's. You can't just say it's not just like one or two criminals doing something in the dark. This is a big thing. This is human nature to share, just share stuff. You see that people find a way to share culture, number one. And you also see the 0 rating system and how it's abused. So we're seeing two different things here at the same time. I'm not going to come out and say that it's good to steal or anything like that, but I'm just saying that's what we're witnessing. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of a problem because now the Wikimedia Foundation has to go in and edit these posts and figure out who's making arbitrary links and like hiding the stuff. It's like Easter eggs and things. It's like, oh, I've got a new album here on this article about steam engines. That's interesting. I don't know what's going on with that.
But it's disguised as a PDF about steam engines, so it's like difficult to. It's like, that's a very, very large PDF, 600 megabyte PDF. What could this be?
Well, the cost of data in these countries is insane too. I mean, we think we've got it bad in America with our 5 gigabyte costs. It's like, 5 gigabytes, $20 a month. The data caps there are like 50 megabytes, except for on these so-called 0 rated websites, meaning that websites don't count the data usage or the data caps against you. And so it is as much about free access as it is about not paying for the ridiculous amount of the ridiculous cost of bandwidth there.
Yeah, so $2.50 for 50 megabytes. That's we're talking about bills that are going to be coming in that are reminiscent of 1980s and 1970s long distance telephone bills. Just ridiculous.
Somebody should write a compression algorithm that so like we need to figure out Comcast's video on demand, and then take the entire video library of like Comcast video on demand, or find something that Comcast does not count against you in terms of usage. Maybe like the T-Mobile binge on, where you get the 1.5 megabit stream from YouTube or something. You guys familiar with WebDriver Torso? It's sort of a test channel that Google has. It's just random shapes that are, you know, playing the whole time. So what we can do is write a quote-unquote compression algorithm that will take all of the clips that are available and then turn the file into a list of clips that need to be put back together in order to get something else. So you could either upload a bunch of things to YouTube encoded with the sort of same WebDriver Torso whatever, and then it's like, oh, I'm watching Game of Thrones with my special player that's decoding things from YouTube. Ta-da! I'm sure that YouTube FS already exists. I didn't give you any terrible ideas.
You know what I think? Back to this article for just a second. I think that this is a pretty clear indication that the free basic is just not going to work. People want access to the internet. They don't want access to only Facebook. And if that's all you give them, they're going to find a way to get around it any way they can. The other thing that's interesting about this is if they had, you know, maybe the full internet for a cheap price, you wouldn't be seeing problems like this. Maybe there would still be piracy, but if there were legitimate legal channels for people to acquire the media they want, a lot of them would use it, and people would make money. So they need to figure that out. That's going to be very important. Some of the solutions on the table are kind of weird as well. They thought maybe we could just block everyone in Angola from, or anyone who has an IP address that's located inside Angola, from going on to Wikipedia or Wikimedia and making any changes. So now they no longer have the ability to do that. That's sort of a censorship of anyone in Angola's free speech on the website Wikimedia, which is kind of weird, because then people in the Congo can just go and edit everything and be like, Angola's stupid, they're all dumb. Because is there neighborly rivals like there are in some other places? I don't know, maybe. But I don't see that as being a viable option either. I don't know. People just need to let us take over, because we'll fix it. If we can fix everything, we'll do it.
The fundamental problem is people. People will be as awful as they are allowed to be. And sunshine makes people, like illuminating the situation, makes people behave in a far less awful way. And that's really just what it comes down to. So we will always try to shine sunlight on things in order to make it less awful. Our new motto.
I have no segue, but maybe something about less awful. Let's talk about...
I don't have a segue or a hoverboard, either one.
Bicycles, then. Old school. Locomotion. Let's talk about Snowden and Lawrence Wilkerson. Lawrence Wilkerson is a former Bush official, and he is applauding Edward Snowden. Wendell, this week I went out with Chaos Drunk. You guys may have watched his stream. He has a different take on Snowden. He was in the military. I won't get into it too much. He doesn't hate or dislike Snowden, but he's also someone who he's not a regular civilian. He's a military, ex-military, and he just had a different perspective on Snowden. Didn't like him as much as I did, and maybe doesn't call him a hero, but maybe a necessary thing. So anyway, we might have him on the show to talk about Snowden for a little bit. So I think it's interesting all the different perspectives you get on the inside, like him. I think it's this is interesting just to me, because it's a Bush official praising Snowden. So you guys can go and take a look at all the stuff. One of the takeaways from this for me is that even he says there's no way he can ever come back to the USA, because, well, there's a quote from his daughter down here toward the end that's very interesting. His daughter is now a Secret Service agent, a former second lieutenant in the United States Army, and she said, I'll quote here, this is basically like when they were talking about what would happen if Snowden came back into the country, and we've been saying, like, we're going to get him, we're going to kill him, and her response to that was, Dad, don't ever count us out, because we will fucking bomb Hiroshima and we'll bomb Nagasaki. That was her response. To say, we're America, we will do it. We will do it. It's almost as scary as some of the stuff coming out of North Korea. That's wild.
My favorite quote about this, well, there's two quotes actually that are in the article, but there's a lot of really good stuff here. And it is, the logic to what he has done is impressive. He has really refrained from anything that was truly dangerous with regard to our security, regardless of what people say. that to me suggests that this guy knows more about what's going on with the NSA and their operations and things that are truly a part of, international intelligence. And to know that, it's really scary that the intelligence apparatus has even more stuff that we don't know about. And this guy's saying, yeah, he hasn't really covered the really dangerous stuff, and that's really impressive. But the other thing that I thought was really good is Snowden seems to me to be as pure as the driven snow. He laughed. You can be dangerous if you're that way, but you can also be helpful. And I think he's been more helpful than dangerous.
The first quote you just read, that's a lot of the, I mean, when you see someone who likes Snowden but has a problem, that's usually their problem. It's usually that, hey, he's got all this information and he is making us weaker around the globe. He is releasing too much information. Now the enemies know things about us that they shouldn't know. It's too sensitive, and he's compromised, he's compromised the integrity of our security here in the USA on a global scale. So that's usually what you get into. So I think I'm going to send this over to Chaos Chunk, and then maybe we'll have him on to have a talk as soon as we get our office. We'll have a sit down with him because he's local and interesting.
I would be curious to know, like, Snowden's never really talked about it, and I think it's because it's too open to spin. But there were 3 analysts like Snowden that came before Snowden and tried to blow the whistle through normal whistleblowing channels, and those guys were all shot down. One guy was older, and he was basically forced into retirement. Then he was arrested, and then they took away his retirement, and then they did a whole bunch of really messed up stuff just to mess with him. And finally,
talk about Benny, or which one is that?
I think that was I don't remember if that was Drake or Benny. Actually, we should probably look it up and include it real quick.
Yeah.
One second, and I will tell you. But just this week, there was an internal investigation into the whistleblowing process for these NSA guys that came before Snowden, and they were ordered not to destroy, like, whatever their internal evidence was that was not in as part of the public hearing, but why they were acting the way that they were, the government. They were ordered not to destroy anything related to that case or any of their internal memos or anything that they said, and they destroyed it anyway, which this whistleblower investigation thing was another arm that was just checking to make sure that the whistleblowing process stuff was protected. Because this guy, went to Congress and went to a committee whose job it was to keep an eye on these kinds of things. And so he totally went through proper channels. He did everything absolutely perfectly. And when this investigation that's only happening now in 2016 after this stuff that happened in 2012, good Lord, we should not put somebody through torture like that. When we're finally investigating it, the people that were involved at the time just destroyed all the stuff under orders not to. And so, of course, nothing is going to happen to those guys. But I just think it's interesting that this is only just now coming out.
Yeah, I got Thomas Drake. I believe it was Thomas Drake, but it might have been Benny, but I'm pretty sure it's Thomas Drake. Anyway, he's on the screen now.
Plus also the Clapper lying to Congress. Clapper lied to Congress.
Yeah, but he's on the right side, and he's towing the line, so,
Towing the line should not give you a blank check to lie to Congress. Jesus.
Speaking of insanity, let's talk about France. They seem to think that they control the entire internet. So if you guys remember, there was the right to be forgotten. That was a big thing in Europe, and the courts over there were like, hey, the right to be forgotten is very important. That means people can say, hey, I did some stupid stuff back in my youth. I put a fish in my butt and tried to swim, and it's all pictures of it are on the internet. I really don't want that out there because now I can't get a job at a sushi restaurant because there's fish in my butt picture on the internet. They're afraid I'm going to do it again. So, in France and some other places in Europe, there is the right to be forgotten. So what Google did was they said, okay, fine. You don't want the picture of a fish in your butt. Well, I don't know why I've gone this direction, but I'm just trying to explain it. So you don't want that picture on the internet? Well, Google.fr, which is what 97% of people in France use, it is blocked. But when you leave France and you go to the USA or some other country and you use Google.com, that stuff is not blocked. So France is not cool with that. They have decided that, hey, listen, if we say something can't be on the internet, it can't be on the internet anywhere globally. And they have fined Google.
Search results.
Search results, right. You can't show up in search results. It's still on the internet somewhere, but it can't be indexed by Google. Now, here are the implications of this, because they fined Google, and now they want to compel Google to if if they say no more this picture on the internet, they want it to be gone from all search terms in any country in the world. So they basically want to be able to police the world. Now the implications here are, let's say this happens here, and you've got some stuff in, I don't know, China, or you've got some place in Angola, I don't know, and they're like, hey, well, you know what? There's a couple other things that we don't want to be indexed anywhere in the world, and so now you've got all these different countries censoring the internet on a global scale. And I don't know if France just completely stupid when it comes to the digital age, or I don't understand, because this would be crippling to the internet as we know it on a global scale. They can't be that stupid, are they? I don't know.
I don't know. It really depends on the interpretation of the law and how Google services work. Because if the right to be forgotten is this data about you belongs to you, if that's how that is, you must delete the data. And they delete the data from French servers, but the data is not deleted from American servers. Okay, but do we need international law? I think this is another case where we need. We were talking last episode about the manga carta. We need the manga carta of digital rights. Not the manga carta, but the manga carta. That's what we'll call the online version of that.
And it'll be a picture book so people can understand it.
Yeah, maybe data about you or your pictures
right
or whatever. I mean, it's gonna create a legal mess, because what's fair use and reporting on the news and balancing the right of reporting on the news and reporting on somebody that's been in the news, balancing the public interest versus somebody's right to privacy. I like what the European Union is doing, trying to balance those things for an individual's privacy versus the right of the citizenry to have news about people. I like what they're doing in principle. It's just the execution is kind of clunky, and I don't think it's ever going to be a perfect solution. It also creates a huge overhead potentially for companies to be able to deal with this kind of thing. I think it's actually more work for Google to make it work this way in France than to just make it work this way everywhere. And so I don't know if it's Google, being contrarian, or if it's just a distribution of services, or exactly what the details are. But I have a hard time really deciding one way or the other, because I sort of see the line that France and other countries in the European Union are trying to walk, and I appreciate it. But from a technical standpoint and from like the programming and the implementation, man, it's a hard problem to solve. Can't hear you.
Clear my throat as I'm going to go. Let's switch back over to artificial intelligence. This article probably should have come earlier with the virtual reality stuff, because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. But this article is just a New York Times article. It's okay. They've left out a ton of information here, so I'm just going to gloss over it, and we'll use it as a justification to chit-chat about this. They're saying the race is on to control artificial intelligence and tech's future. Yeah, and they've mentioned some of the players here, which they basically just named off. Let's name off the big technology companies like Amazon, Google, IBM, Microsoft. They mentioned a few smaller startups in here that are trying to do some stuff, like Feifei Li, who is working on a new company. And then if you're scrolling down to the bottom here, there are a few more they mentioned. But I think that, yeah, whoever's going to control artificial intelligence and whoever controls augmented reality or virtual reality in the future, put your money into that stock. Just watch. That's going to be the next Google. Is going to be whoever can get the best AI algorithms. If it's Google, then Google's going to be the next Google, and they're going to be Skynet. And who knows? Maybe they'll do it. But we also have some big players globally that are not mentioned here. They didn't mention Baidu. And Baidu already has a pretty sophisticated artificial intelligence system. I'd say it's right up there with anything Google has. Baidu is essentially the Google of China, and China has way more people than we have here. So they're able to harvest tons of data, metadata. They're creating algorithms. It's a pretty deep system. If you guys want to go out and Google, Baidu AI, you'll be like, whoa, it can do some pretty impressive things. But they didn't mention that one in the article. But keep an eye on that as well. And if any of you guys know of a pretty interesting artificial intelligence startup that we should look at, let us know, because I think this stuff's pretty fascinating, and it is, the future of where things are going.
There was some other news from IBM this week that they figured out a way to take normal standard CMOS fabrication processes and basically build a neural net directly on a CMOS chip, But the improvement is that the back propagation of basically the learning component of the neural net implemented in hardware, implemented with this process that can be done in a normal CMOS process, not anything special as far as chip fabrication goes, speeds up the learning by about 30,000 times, or the back propagation of the learning about 30,000 times. This is really exciting because even though Google's Go thing did as impressively as it did, it took thousands of compute cores in order to be able to do that. Whereas IBM is working on hardware that specifically addresses the need for artificial intelligence. Holy crap, if IBM gets this up and running with normal CMOS fabrication, run-of-the-mill, IBM could be producing our AI co-processors for our next generation of machines, in as little as 2 to 3 years. And that's really exciting, Whoa. But it's also really scary for, future employment prospects.
I wonder, so we get that going on. I wonder, I guess, what's going to go on with the advancements in quantum computing. I don't think that's nearly as close as far as a time frame goes, but I think that could also be used to help out with some of the AI crunching and all the algorithms involved there. Anyway, I just mentioned Baidu, and sure enough, there's an article here about Baidu. It's just a quick mention. It's kind of funny. Baidu, they built some AI that is able to predict stampedes and dangerous crowds. It's kind of not even worth mentioning because it's so simple, but it does solve a problem in China. They have there's so many people there, and they're all, in small. They're all in cities. A lot of them are in cities now, so you get like 30 million people in a city almost now, and it's getting up there. Shanghai and Beijing and where else? Chongqing is getting they're getting close to 30 million people in the entire areas. Anyway, the algorithm says, oh, today's a holiday. There are a lot of people nearby, all searching to see what's going on down by the river or whatever. So I bet a lot of people are going to go down by the river. So Baidu will say like, hey, you may get caught in a stampede and die. So maybe not go down by the river today, just to let you know. So that's an interesting little warning system. The takeaway for me is that, hey, they're able to harvest all this interesting data that could be very good for marketing. And Baidu said, yeah, we're able to harvest that data. And yeah, it could be used for marketing, but we're not yet. But it's not off the table. So I'm sure Google can do the exact same thing. We just don't have, this is not a headline because we don't really have crowds like that, and there's not a lot of stampedes unless it's the day after Thanksgiving and everyone is freaking out over some cheap piece of plastic, so they're going to go stampede each other and punch each other in the wall in Walmarts and stuff. Maybe we just need no, we don't. We just need we don't need anything. We'll let them do their thing. They will thin out the Darwin Awards, that type of thing. Yeah. Anyway, quick mention on that, but do go and Google Baidu AI, or if you want a special segment on it next time we go to China. I don't think they'll ever let us near anybody who works on Baidu, but it'd be kind of interesting to talk to them if we can. Yeah. You want to talk about Truthy for a minute? The new the new program to study social pollution on Twitter.
We're funding it.
Why are we funding this? Wow, it's the National Science Foundation, because that sounds a lot safer than the NSA, or the whatever, the Defense Department, or the Department of we're going to kill you all, or whatever department they want. The Ministry of we hate you.
The NSF funds a lot of. I've worked on projects that have been NSF funded, and they fund a lot of interesting and diverse things. This particular project is mining data from Twitter in order to learn how things on Twitter, social interactions on Twitter basically lead to social groups forming and actions and things happening. The article here written in the Washington Post is worried about, it's like the FCC had sent in people to sort of not really control, but keep an eye on, quote unquote, the editorial process within television stations, and certainly now American television. Well, actually, worldwide media is controlled by a fantastically small number of companies. In the last 20 or 30 years, media companies have consolidated to the point that a relatively small number of companies control the message the messages that consumers experience on radio, television, newspaper, and a whole bunch of other things. And so this is saying, well, wait a minute, we've right now on the internet, people like us can just say whatever the hell we want on YouTube and Twitter and whatever else. And so this is saying, it's like, mathematically, how many people do we need injecting a certain opinion or the right messaging or whatever? Do we need a lot of like sock puppet accounts, sending the right message in order to manipulate the story, in order to manipulate the situation? Now, I don't know that the NSF is funding that, but certainly this research could be used in a perverse way, and there's no end of defense contractors that would be lining up to say, yes, we have whatever product you need, just write us a check.
Mm-hmm. Let me read the actual description of what they're supposed to be doing with this, and they're paying the University of Indiana, I believe, to do a lot of this, a lot of the work on this. But it's supposed to mitigate the diffusion of false and misleading ideas, detect hate speech and subversive propaganda, and here's the paradox, and assist in the preservation of open debate. So you want to make sure there's no subversive propaganda or hate speech while also preserving an open debate. Sounds like you want an open debate as long as it's in agreement with whatever the party line is. So, yeah.
See, the thing here is that for people, citizenry, to recognize hate speech and propaganda, they have to be educated. They have to know to look for those things. They can't, I don't think the state should be involved in suppressing those things. I think the state should be involved in educating its citizenry so that its citizenry can tell the difference between active subterfuge and, snake oil, as it were, and reality. And I don't know if we have that anymore. I don't know if we're equipping our citizens to be able to do that.
Let's also take one thing into account. I mean, what we think is propaganda or hate speech is not what they think is propaganda or hate speech. I'm doing this, that means I'm lying. No. Watch out. Here comes a lie. But think about that for just a minute, because it might not be propaganda. It might just be you sharing your favorite, I don't know, your opinion on something that's happening in Washington. That's what it could be. And they'd be like, oh, well, that is not in line with our drone strike policy. So that is...
drone liberation policy. It's not a drone strike policy anymore.
Oh, yeah, strike is a bad word, yes. They have struck that word from their vernacular, and now it is the drone liberation. Here they come to save the day. And, you say something negative about that, they're like, ooh, that's a false and a misleading idea. Interesting. Maybe you post a link to a candidate who's a grassroots candidate who's not part of the establishment. Ooh, that's subversive propaganda.
So that's like that time that Florida was fining politicians mentioning climate change because Florida's going to wash off the map when the oceans rise. Is it like that?
Yeah, pretty much. But you know what? I'm okay with it. I won't miss it. Every freaking fish in the sea is going to be coked up for months. I'm in so much trouble right now. Oh, God. Don't hate the messenger. All right. So the FCC, they said they weren't going to lock down routers, and now some routers are being locked down. For this one, it's just an article about a TP-Link router that is basically locked down. When I say lockdown, I mean that they are completely blocking the installation of third-party firmware, even when the hardware can't support OpenWRT, DDWRT, Tomato, and other popular open-source firmwares for their routers. TP-Link is locking their stuff down. So, hey, everybody, don't buy TP-Link anymore. There we go. Got that taken care of. Anyway, TP-Link is saying they're doing it in response to some of the FCC's rules and requirements, when at the same time the FCC was saying that they're going to make sure that they do not force vendors to lock things down. So there's some weird information flying around on both sides of this here. But there are some pretty interesting FCC regulations that may be causing this. I don't know. Should we look more into this? Do a video on it?
The FCC is saying, well, we want people to be able to customize this, but what they don't realize is that the software that runs the radio and the software that runs the device are in the same place. Software-defined radio is the new hotness in terms of having a cheap radio in order to be able to do stuff, and manufacturers very pragmatically will just lock the device firmware down so that it cannot be flashed except by real images. And so the FCC doesn't realize that it's creating this situation, even though the community has warned them. I think that when they see this, hopefully they will backpedal a little bit or find another way. But the reality is that it's always going to be cheaper for manufacturers to just lock down the whole device than it is to try to lock down just the radio part of it, or to try to prevent the radio from only running signed firmware, or whatever the manufacturer might do. It's just easier for the manufacturer to lock down everything. On the other hand, this might create a cottage industry for flashable routers. I think it's already pretty much a write-off that any router that you have would be custom flashable. I don't think that's a realistic expectation anyway. Linksys and a few other companies have tried to capitalize on that niche by offering routers that have extra RAM or extra flash space or extra features that are targeted at people that would be looking to modify their firmware. But Linksys has also really badly handled some things in the community, like to do with the Linux AC router, which took well over a year for the Linux firmware to actually show up.
Mm-hmm.
So
actually, we have a video on that coming up. We have some of the newest Linksys stuff in the house. Kane has been talking to one of the guys who works on OpenWRT, and it turns out the problem was not Linksys. The problem was a bug in some of the code for the Broadcom chip. Yeah. And that was the problem that was preventing it. And some of the open source community finally got their hands on it and were like, here's the problem, it's fixed, and now it works. So Linksys had intended for it to work, but some error in code seemed to be causing
some of the problem was that Broadcom was not supplying the right binary blob to be injected as a driver or whatever.
Yeah, that might have been part of it as well, but I think there was an error somewhere in there. But to make a long story short, it works now. Kane has a few of the routers. He's got them right now. He's playing with them, and he messaged me in the middle of the night the other night, like 2 days ago, and he was like, holy shit, this thing is awesome. So he's got his open source firmware on there. He has installed
Asterisk.
So Alix is this form factor. He's installing Asterisk on the thing. So I was like, really? You could install Asterisk on that thing? He's like, yeah, it's really powerful. And he thinks he may be able to get a very stripped down version of Debian or Ubuntu installed on this thing. It's pretty powerful. So
cool.
We'll have some videos coming up on that pretty soon. And yeah, who knows? Anyway, be careful with TP-Link stuff, and I hope companies keep, like Asus and Linksys, and they're two of the ones that are really doing this. Belkin, Buffalo, I know that they try to keep everything open. I hope they still keep things open for us. But yeah, no more TP-Link for me. Nope. TP-Link.
It's too bad. They made pretty good hardware.
All right, you want to go to the moon? I think we should go to the moon. It's only going to cost $10 billion to build a moon base. That's it. Space travel is getting cheap. $10 billion. Let's put this into perspective. So we could build a moon base for $10 billion where we could have 12 people living in space. Now, $10 billion. And we don't seem to, our government doesn't seem to be that interested in it. China and some of Europe is starting to get very interested in going back to the moon, possibly building a base. Let's just take a look at our military spending. This is from 2014-2015 estimated spending. Total spending, $610 billion. But we can't afford $10 billion to go to the moon. If we blow up the moon and then have contractors who are lobbying politicians and giving them lots of money, have them rebuild the moon, then can we go? We just want to go blow it up and rebuild it.
There's oil on the moon. We got to go.
Yeah. I don't know. There's no one up there to hate. We need someone up there to hate. Maybe there's aliens up there who worship a very funny god. Then we can use that. We can hate those guys. And then, once the population hates them enough, we're like, yeah, blow up the moon. We don't care about the consequences. Blow up the moon. And then the contractor's like, great, let's blow up the moon. We'll rebuild it. That is what we got to do. We got to start some rumors about aliens. This is the wrong show for that. Call Alex Jones. He's the man to make this happen. So many people in America believe that guy. It's kind of scary. All right, that's enough of this nonsense. I do one thing. We should go to the moon. I'm skipping that article. And I think I'm going to skip this article about... Well, there's this article about Central Park looking really cool with mountains and glass walls, but it's never going to happen. It's just a an idea. It's a pretty interesting idea. One Volvo skyscraper competition thing.
Remember when that storm happened and it flooded all the subway? It'll be
Yep.
like that, except it'll flood Central Park.
But there's a giant glass wall around it. I think it's a pretty cool idea to do things like this, and we could possibly see some things like this in the future with cities where they want to terraform a certain area. The idea here is that, hey, there's no mountains in New York. There are rolling hills and there are mountains outside of New York City, but if we dig down 1,000 feet, suddenly we've got some mountain areas there. We got 1,000 foot peak over here you can go and climb to the top of, and it's fun and it's healthy. And I don't think we're going to see that now, but I do think in the future, in the next 20, 30, 40 years, where people are really concentrated into a small area, but they need, they want a mountain to climb. So let's dig down 1,000 feet and make a mountain. Why not? We can make everything else. Sounds like fun to me. All right. Video gaming stuff, is that pretty much all that's left? Yeah, lots of... Oh, this would be fun. The PlayStation 4K. Apparently that's real. What are they going to cram into a box for $400 that will allow them to call it the PlayStation... Well, that's PlayStation 4 4.5, but some people are calling it the PlayStation 4K. So I think this Extreme Tech article does a pretty good job of picking it apart and being like, yeah, no matter what you cram in that box for $400, it ain't going to do 4K at all, ever. You can barely do 1080p.
We're gonna put a cube of Furies in there. It'll be fine.
the amount of power that it's going to need and the heat that's going to be generated from that.
Well, no, that's the beauty of it. You see, we have a cube of them, and so there's actually 6 Furies, one for each side of the cube, and the heat is dumped into an extra dimensional space. We've got this really amazing material that we've coated with it, and so the heat is actually just going to be shoved into subspace, and it's going to be great because no heat can escape the Fury cube, and that's going to be the PlayStation 4K.
Oh man. That just sounded like a movie trailer for a movie called The Fury Cube. No heat can escape the Fury Cube. This summer, Denzel Van Washington is... I don't know.
Well, there's already been a movie
there.
about the Cube 8K. It was called... was it called The Cube? Is that the one? You can actually go inside it. It's for VR. So
I saw a movie called The Cube about something. I don't know. Like a lot of murder and stuff. Their suspense and whatnot. I don't remember what it was about, though. I was asleep.
6 complete strangers of widely varying personality characteristics are involuntarily placed in an endless Kafkaesque maze containing deadly traps. Yeah, that's a movie about the PlayStation 8K. It's with the VR.
That was okay. Let's talk about Doom multiplayer modes. This is actually... I don't know if we're going to have a copy of this or not at Land Syndicate, but speaking of Land Syndicate, tournaments will be announced in a couple of days, and you guys can sign up for them on our website. But anyway, here's the Doom trailer for all the different game modes. There's only a couple that seem to be new. Soul Harvest. This one doesn't give me enough information. It looks like it's just deathmatch, except you pick up their ghost after you kill them. But I'm not sure what's different about it, unless the souls have some extra points. And then you've got your freeze tag, which we've seen in different games before. I want to see the...
Capture the area.
Yeah, capture the area. They call them something cool, like this, guard this zone.
The area is moving.
That's cool.
So that's neat. I don't know if I've seen that before.
Yeah, that's different. That's brutal. Capture. That's the moving area. Okay, that's cool. Interesting. Clan Arena. That's what Kane's going to be playing all day long. Team deathmatch. So I want to see some of the multiplayer modes that allow you to become the demon or summon the demon and that sort of thing. I think they outlined a few of those before, but those are the ones that seem to be the most unique. We'll have to see how that works. Fallout 4 survival mode. I haven't put enough time into Fallout 4 yet. But this might be finally time to do it.
With this, it's like you can't just sleep in a sleeping bag. There's no fast travel, and when you die, you die.
That's kind of the way I play. Well, when you die, you die. That's rough. But this is kind of the way I play Skyrim. Except it makes the game so hard that it's... Well, I also use Requiem, which is just... No one used that. It makes the game really ridiculous, and then yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that it's if you die, you die, but it did say no quick save, no quick load, those kind of things. So it's probably when you die, you die. So that's just... I
making
don't
it
know.
a
I think I'll have
roguelike.
more fun playing the robot mod, where you can build your own robots.
Yeah, that just came out as well as an expansion, so I have not put enough time into it. I played a little bit of it, and it didn't have the same feel as New Vegas, which is my favorite out of the new games. I just had the flavor. This one didn't have the same flavor, so I was like, whatever. And guys, thanks a lot for all the feedback on the mouse. We've got some very valuable feedback. We have 1,000 this run. It's the first tech mouse. We'll make a couple of changes to this. It'll be slightly more expensive because we're going to make some changes, but yeah, there's not many left. We've sold out like half of them so far. So if you guys want the original Tech Syndicate mouse, I think it's still one of the most accurate mice out there for the price, in my opinion. If you guys want this,
we're not claiming to be the Rain Man of mouse design. It's just a mouse that is a reasonable mouse for $35 that has the combination of features that we wanted. That's it.
And, yeah, mainly the sensor. It's basically a tricycle with a rocket pack on the back, as far as the sensor goes. But yeah, you guys have been giving me some pretty valuable feedback, so we'll definitely listen to the feedback and make all of these changes. There are some really good ideas coming from the community, so we'll do whatever we can. I also want to remind you guys, I would figure this is my favorite shirt ever right here. I love this new cyberpunk style light shirt. Quite enjoy that. There it is, yes. It's one of my favorite new designs. Now, shirt of the month. It's almost over. We've got a bunch of ridiculous shirts of the month. Design of the month here. All these different colors. So don't forget that only a few more days left to pick your color for the logo, and then whichever one is the favorite. The favorite 2 or 3 will become regulars, but these tie-dyes will probably be a one-time thing. So if you guys want a ridiculous tie-dye shirt, go ahead and grab it up. Anyway, that's the store. Now back to the tech.
Is the shirt for next month going to be "I survived Land Syndicate"? And all I got was a shitty T-shirt.
We should sell that one just at the event. A really cool cityscape that has like our logo on one of the buildings, and it says Land Syndicate on the top.
Yay!
Looks very cool, actually. Looks very Deus Ex.
Assuming we survive Land Syndicate without melting the power and/or internet.
Yeah, the only thing we need right now is the power.
Remember, it's a LAN party, not an internet party. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, for serious. If you guys think you're going to come and hang out and use up all the bandwidth, we ain't going to have enough bandwidth for you.
It's a LAN party. Let's just
Bring
be clear about
your
that.
Ethernet cables, everybody. Bring your Ethernet cables.
Yes.
I'd say bring a 17 to 20 foot one, just to make sure you have enough. Even if you're right there, it just depends on where you sit. So bring your Ethernet cable. We'll have extra on site, and we'll sell it at cost. If we have to sit there, and we'll make you a cable. I'm gonna have a spool of Cat 6 with me or Cat 5e.
Because if you all forget cables, it's going to be Sunday before we can plug you in.
Yeah, really. So bring your cables. If you do forget them, I'll cut it off and sell it to you for $5 or whatever. But don't think that's what you're going to do when you get there, because if 50 people do that, it'd be waiting a little while for your cables. Unless you want to make your own, I'll cut them and hand you the whatever. Anyway,
maybe that should be the punishment. You forget your Ethernet cable, you got to make your own. And if you can't do it, well, you just go to Walmart. I don't know what to tell you.
Here's a very informative video that Kane made. There you go.
Don't stream it.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the comments on the website. Thanks to all the Patreons. Thanks to all the tech support members. See you guys in the comments.